Staff Sergeant Thomas Wright had learned to trust the small details, the ones most people missed. Today, the details were wrong. Marcus Pemberton stood in the palace courtyard, checking his phone for the third time in 2 minutes. There was nothing unusual about that. Drivers waited. They checked messages. They kept schedules. But Pemberton kept glancing toward the east entrance, the one Charlotte used after her piano lessons. And he'd positioned the vehicle differently, closer to that door, angled for quick departure. Wright watched from his post near the security gate. 6 years of royal protection had taught him to recognize patterns. This was a pattern, just not one he could articulate yet, not one that would sound reasonable in a report. But before we continue, make sure you hit subscribe on Royal Guard Files. Drop a comment below where you're watching from. Now, back to what happened next. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the courtyard. Normal Thursday, late October, temperature dropping as evening approached. Wright had been on duty since 6 that morning. Another 2 hours until shift change. Routine day. Except for Pemberton. The driver had been with Queen Consort Camilla's household for nearly a year now. Professional enough. Former private security, according to his file. Drove Camilla to engagements, managed vehicle logistics, occasionally transported other family members when schedules overlapped. Standard role in a royal household. Wright had noticed him around Charlotte before. Nothing concrete, just frequency. Pemberton volunteered for school runs, offered to handle pickups when other drivers were available. Found reasons to be in corridors Charlotte walked through. Could mean nothing. Probably meant nothing. Wright shifted his weight, adjusted his radio. The courtyard remained quiet. A few staff members crossed between buildings. Garden crews working near the south wall. Normal afternoon activity. The east door opened. Charlotte emerged, with her music teacher, a woman in her 60s, who'd taught 3 generations of royals. The princess carried her small backpack, the one with her initials embroidered on the front. Her school uniform looked slightly rumpled from a long day. She was laughing at something her teacher said. Pemberton's posture changed. Subtle. He straightened, put his phone away, moved toward them with purpose. Wright's attention sharpened. The music teacher said goodbye at the doorway, squeezing Charlotte's shoulder affectionately before heading back inside. Charlotte started across the courtyard alone, taking her time. She hummed something. One of the pieces she'd been practicing. Probably. Pemberton intercepted her halfway to the vehicle. "Come on, we're running late," he said. His voice carried across the courtyard, clipped, impatient. Charlotte looked up at him. "Sorry, Mrs. Harrison wanted to—" "I don't need excuses." Pemberton reached for her backpack. "Give me that." What happened next took less than 3 seconds. Pemberton grabbed the backpack strap, not gently, a sharp yank that pulled Charlotte forward. She stumbled slightly, catching her balance. He pulled the bag off her shoulder with enough force that she had to brace herself. Charlotte's entire body language changed. The humming stopped. Her shoulders drew up. She took a step backward, even though he already had the bag. "Get in the car," Pemberton said. He turned away, tossing her backpack onto the front passenger seat. Casual, like he'd done nothing wrong. Charlotte stood motionless for a moment. Then she walked to the vehicle. Slowly, each step deliberate. She opened the rear door herself and climbed in. The door closed. Through the tinted windows, Wright could see her small shape in the back seat. She sat pressed against the far side, away from Pemberton's position in the driver's seat. The entire interaction lasted maybe 20 seconds. Wright's hand had moved to his radio without conscious thought. But what? Would he report? Driver handled passenger's bag roughly? Princess got in vehicle as instructed? Nothing in that exchange violated protocol. Nothing he could document, except Charlotte's reaction. That step backward. That wasn't surprise at the sudden grab. That was recognition. Familiarity with behavior she didn't like. That was a child who'd learned to be careful around someone. Wright had seen it before, during his military service, in villages where local officials smiled and made promises, and residents learned to step carefully around them. That particular body language, the one that came from repeated experience. The vehicle didn't move immediately. Pemberton sat in the driver's seat, still doing something on his phone. Charlotte remained motionless in the back. Wright pulled out his own phone, pretending to check messages. He opened his notes app instead. Typed quickly. Thursday, 4:47 p.m. Pemberton rough handling of Charlotte's bag. C's reaction showed fear, avoidance. Vehicle, angle unusual. Pemberton's positioning seemed planned. Would anyone care? Probably not. But Wright documented it anyway. The vehicle finally started. Pemberton pulled out of the courtyard, following the standard route toward Kensington Palace. Wright watched until it disappeared through the gates. He should let it go. One rough moment. Stress. Long day. Drivers got impatient. Kids were resilient. But that stepped backward. Wright pulled up his duty log on his tablet. Cross-referenced against Palace departure records. Searched for Pemberton's name over the past 6 months. The results made his stomach tighten. 17 times in 6 months, Pemberton had volunteered specifically for Charlotte's transport. Not George, not Louis. Charlotte. When other drivers were available, Pemberton requested the assignment. When schedules overlapped with other members of the royal family, he specifically asked for Charlotte's route. Wright expanded the search, incident reports, staff observations, anything flagged in Pemberton's file. 3 entries, all dismissed. 2 months ago, Palace housekeeper noted Pemberton frequently present in corridors near children's quarters. No action taken. Explained as familiarizing himself with palace layout. 5 weeks ago, another guard observed Pemberton talking to Charlotte alone near the library. Conversation lasted several minutes. Guard's note. C seemed uncomfortable, but police. P's body language appropriate, but conversation seemed unnecessary. No follow-up. 3 weeks ago, Charlotte's nanny mentioned to someone in HR that Charlotte had become quieter lately. When asked if anything specific triggered it, Nanny couldn't identify cause. Note filed, no investigation. Each item alone meant nothing. Together, they formed something Wright recognized. A pattern, the kind predators created when they were testing boundaries. Wright closed his tablet. He was reading too much into it. Had to be. Pemberton had passed his background check. Came, recommended, worked for a member of the royal family. This was paranoia. Except Wright had learned to trust paranoia. The times he'd ignored his instincts, people got hurt. The times he'd acted on them, he'd prevented something worse. His shift ended at 7. 2 hours, then someone else's problem. But what if he was right? What if those small details added up to something larger? What if Charlotte spent the next 2 hours in a vehicle with someone who'd been slowly, carefully establishing access to her? What if tonight was the night Pemberton decided to push boundaries further? Wright made a decision. He radioed the security office. Wright to base, requesting clarification on today's evening transport schedule for Kensington Palace. The response came through his earpiece. Pemberton's doing the run. Standard route. Should arrive around 17:30. Copy that. Any additional security requested for the transport? Brief pause. Negative. Standard single driver protocol. Why? Wright chose his words carefully. Just confirming procedures. Thanks. He couldn't explain it. Not without sounding like he was manufacturing problems. But he could position himself where he'd see Charlotte's arrival at Kensington. Could observe the interaction when she exited the vehicle. Could document anything concerning. Could be there if something went wrong. Wright notified his relief that he'd be staying late to handle some administrative follow-up. Not technically a lie. This was follow-up. Just not the kind that involved paperwork. He drove his personal vehicle to a position 3 blocks from Kensington Palace, parked where he had a sightline to the entrance Charlotte would use, waited, 1728. The black sedan appeared, Pemberton at the wheel. It pulled through security, proceeded to the drop-off point. Wright watched through his phone's camera, pretending to be on a call. Zoom function let him see details clearly. The vehicle stopped. Pemberton got out, opened Charlotte's door. She emerged slowly, reached for her backpack. Pemberton held it just out of reach for a moment, said something Wright couldn't hear, then handed it to her. Charlotte took it, started toward the entrance. Pemberton followed, not beside her, behind her, close behind her. At the doorway, palace staff waited, Charlotte's nanny. The woman smiled, greeting Charlotte warmly. Pemberton stopped several feet away. His expression shifted. The impatience disappeared. He became professional, polite, smiled at the nanny, said something that made her laugh. Different person, completely different. Charlotte glanced back once, saw Pemberton talking to her nanny. Her shoulders remained tense. The door closed. Pemberton returned to his vehicle, drove away. Wright sat in his car, processing what he'd witnessed. Pemberton had 2 distinct modes, one for when others were watching, one for when they weren't. That switch happened instantly, effortlessly, like someone who'd practiced it. His phone buzzed. Text from Captain Richard Wells, his immediate supervisor. Wright, need you back at base. Have a situation. Wright started his car. Whatever Wells needed, it would have to wait. He typed back, "On my way, 20 minutes." But his mind stayed on Charlotte, on Pemberton's dual behavior, on the pattern that kept getting clearer. Something was building. He didn't know what yet. But patterns like this didn't just stop. They escalated. He reached the security office 90 minutes later. Wells was waiting in his office, door open. "Shut the door," Wells said as Wright entered. "Not good." Wells only closed the doors for serious conversations. Wright closed it, sat down across from Wells's desk. The captain was 46, former military police, father of 2 daughters. He'd been with Royal Protection for 12 years. "Got a call from Camilla's private secretary," Wells said. "Apparently, you've been making inquiries about one of her household staff." Wright kept his expression neutral. "Making inquiries. Pemberton, her driver. You pulled his file this afternoon. Cross-referenced his assignments. Ran searches on incident reports." Wells leaned back in his chair. "Want to tell me why?" "Due diligence," Wright said. "Part of my security review. We do security reviews quarterly. This isn't the quarter, and you specifically searched for interactions with Princess Charlotte." Wright had known this might happen. Palace IT tracked file access, especially for staff files. He'd hoped for more time before anyone noticed. "I observed some behavior that concerned me," Wright said. "What behavior?" Wright explained the backpack incident. Kept it factual, no interpretations. Just what he'd seen. Wells listened without interrupting. When Wright finished, the captain was quiet for a moment. "So, a driver was impatient with a child who was running late," Wells finally said. "Handled her bag roughly. And you've decided this means what, exactly?" "I don't know yet. But it's not just today. He volunteers specifically for her transport. 17 times in 6 months. He finds reasons to be around her. Other staff have noticed. It's in the reports. Reports that were reviewed and dismissed by people whose job is to assess these concerns. Maybe they missed something. Or maybe you're seeing a threat that isn't there." Wells's tone wasn't unkind, just firm. "Right, I know your background. I know what you've seen during your service. Sometimes that experience makes us hypervigilant, makes us see dangers that don't exist." Wright felt frustration rising, but kept his voice level. "And sometimes hypervigilance is what prevents something terrible." "Agreed, which is why I'm not dismissing this. but I need more than a rough bag grab and a guard's intuition. Pemberton passed his background check, has good references, been with Camilla for almost a year without incident. You're asking me to red flag a staff member based on behavior that could have a dozen innocent explanations. I'm not asking you to red flag anyone. I'm documenting observations. No, you drove to Kensington Palace after your shift ended to surveil unauthorized transport. That's not documenting. That's investigating. Wells leaned forward. I need you to be honest with me. What do you think is happening here? Wright considered his answer carefully. Wells was right that he couldn't prove anything. But he also knew what his instincts were telling him. I think Pemberton has been slowly establishing access to Charlotte, testing boundaries, building familiarity, isolating her from other people. I think he's been doing it carefully enough that each individual action seems innocent, but together it's a pattern. A pattern of what? Someone grooming a target. The word hung in the air between them. Heavy. Serious. Wells's expression hardened. That's a significant accusation. It's not an accusation. It's a concern. One I think warrants closer. Observation. Based on? Based on 15 years of learning to recognize when something's wrong. Based on the way Charlotte reacted to him today. Based on his volunteer pattern. Based on 3 separate staff members noticing concerning behavior. Based on his ability to switch personalities instantly, depending on who's watching. Wells was quiet for a long moment. His hand moved to a folder on his desk. He opened it. Inside were printouts. The same incident reports Wright had found. The same cross-reference of Pemberton's assignment requests. I pulled these after the secretary called, Wells said. Wanted to see what you'd found. You're right. That individually, these items are dismissible. But together, he trailed off, closed the folder. Together, they're concerning. Wright felt something release in his chest. Wells believed him, or at least took him seriously. What do you want to do? Wright asked. Nothing yet. We don't have enough for official action. But I want you to keep documenting anything else you observe, any other interactions. Build a case if there's a case to build. Wells paused. But Wright, you need to be careful. If you're wrong about this, you're going to damage an innocent man's reputation and career. That's not something we do lightly. And if I'm right, then we stop him before he hurts that child. What Wright didn't know yet was that he was already too late to prevent the next incident. Pemberton had been growing bolder. Tonight, he'd planned something that would force Wright's hand, something that would make the pattern undeniable. The next morning, Wright arrived for his shift at 5:30, earlier than necessary. He wanted to review overnight security logs before the day staff arrived. Nothing unusual in the reports. Standard night watch, no incidents, no concerns flagged. Wright made coffee in the break room, checked his phone. No messages from Wells. He'd hoped for an update on Pemberton's background, maybe a deeper investigation into those references, but it was early yet. At 6:45, Palace staff began arriving for the day. Kitchen crew, housekeeping, administrative personnel. Wright watched them through the security office window. Normal Friday morning activity. 7:20. Charlotte's nanny arrived. Wright recognized her immediately. Mrs. Patricia Dunmore, 62 years old. Been with William and Kate's household for 8 years. Impeccable record. The children trusted her completely. Wright made a decision. He intercepted her in the corridor, leading to the family's private quarters. Mrs. Dunmore, could I speak with you for a moment? She turned, surprised, but not alarmed. Of course, Sergeant Wright. Is something wrong? Just a routine question. About Princess Charlotte's security detail. They stepped into an empty conference room. Wright closed the door. I need you to think carefully about the past few months, Wright said. Have you noticed any changes in Charlotte's behavior? Anything unusual? Mrs. Dunmore's expression shifted. became guarded. Why are you asking? It's related to an ongoing security assessment. Please, anything you've observed could be relevant. She hesitated, glanced toward the door, then back at Wright. I mentioned something to HR 6 weeks ago about Charlotte being quieter than usual. I saw that report. Can you be more specific? She used to chatter constantly about school, her friends, things she'd learned. Over the summer, that started to change. She became more reserved, thoughtful. I assumed it was just maturity, growing up. But you weren't sure? No, something felt different. Not wrong, exactly. Just different. Wright pulled out his phone, showed her a photo of Pemberton from the staff directory. Have you ever seen Charlotte interact with this man? Mrs. Dunmore studied the image. Her face tightened. That's Queen Camilla's driver, Marcus Pemberton. Yes, have you seen them together? A few times. He drives her occasionally when schedules overlap. She paused. Why? How does Charlotte act around him? Mrs. Dunmore was quiet for a long moment. Wright could see her thinking back, assembling memories. She's polite, always polite, but she doesn't... She struggled for the right words. She doesn't engage with him the way she does with other staff. With most adults, Charlotte asks questions, makes conversation. With him, she answers when spoken to. That's all. Does that concern you? I never thought about it until now. But yes, now that you ask, it does seem odd. Wright thanked her and let her continue to her duties, but he made a note of the conversation. More evidence. Still not enough, but more. At 8:40, Charlotte arrived for the day. She'd spent the night at Kensington Palace. Standard Friday routine. She had tutoring sessions in the morning, lunch with her grandmother, then piano practice in the afternoon. Wright positioned himself where he could observe without being obvious. Charlotte walked with her brother George toward their tutoring room. She seemed fine, talking with George, laughing at something he said. Normal child behavior. At 11:30, the tutoring session ended. Charlotte emerged alone. George had left earlier for a different appointment. She walked down the corridor toward the music room, her backpack slung over one shoulder. Wright followed at a distance. Professional observation, standard security protocol. Charlotte reached the music room. The door was locked. Her teacher hadn't arrived yet. She sat down on a bench in the hallway to wait. Pulled out a book from her backpack. Started reading. Wright approached casually. Good morning, Princess Charlotte. She looked up, smiled politely. Good morning, Sergeant Wright. Your teacher running late? Just a few minutes. She had to reschedule something. Charlotte returned her attention to her book. Wright sat down on the opposite end of the bench. Not too close. Respectful. Distance. How was your tutoring session? Fine, thank you. Polite. Reserved. The way Mrs. Dunmore had described. Wright tried a different approach. I saw you yesterday afternoon. After your piano lesson, you left with Mr. Pemberton. Charlotte's hands stiffened slightly on her book. Almost imperceptible. But Wright noticed. Yes, she said, voice neutral. How long has he been driving you? I'm not sure. A few months, I think. Do you like him? Charlotte looked up sharply. The question had surprised her. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked back down at her book. He's fine. Not, he's nice. Not, I like him. Just, he's fine. Charlotte, Wright said gently, if something ever makes you uncomfortable, you know you can tell someone, right? You can tell your parents, or your nanny, or any of the guards. She didn't respond immediately. Her eyes stayed fixed on the page of her book, but Wright could tell she wasn't reading, processing, deciding. I know, she finally said, voice quiet. Has something made you uncomfortable? Charlotte's jaw tightened, a child trying to be brave. trying to follow rules. But Wright could see the conflict in her expression. Before she could answer, footsteps echoed down the corridor. They both turned. Marcus Pemberton walked toward them. Fast, purposeful. "Princess Charlotte," he said, his voice carrying. "I've been looking for you. Your grandmother needs you in the west drawing room. Change of schedule." Charlotte stood immediately, closed her book, put it back in her backpack. Pemberton's eyes moved to Wright. "Thank you for keeping her company, Sergeant. I'll take her from here." Wright stood as well. "I wasn't aware of a schedule change. Mrs. Dunmore didn't mention it." "Last minute. The Queen Consort just requested it." Pemberton's tone was pleasant, professional, but his body language was tense. "Come along, Charlotte. We shouldn't keep her waiting." Charlotte started to move. Wright noticed her shoulders had drawn up again. That's defensive posture. "Just one moment," Wright said. He pulled out his radio. "Let me confirm with the security office. Standard protocol for schedule changes." Pemberton's expression hardened. "That's not necessary. I'm telling you there's been a change." "I understand, but protocol requires verification. Won't take long." Wright raised the radio. "Base, this is Wright. Need confirmation on Princess Charlotte's schedule. Reported change to meet with Queen Consort in West Drawing Room." Pause. Then the response. "Negative, Wright. No schedule change logged. Charlotte's lunch with Queen Consort is at 1300 hours. Music lesson at 11:45. Wright lowered his radio. Looked at Pemberton. "There's no schedule change." Pemberton's face flushed. "I was just informed of it. Check with Camilla's secretary." "The security office would have been notified. They weren't." "Well, that's an administrative error. I'm telling you." Wright interrupted, voice calm but firm, "that until I receive official confirmation, Princess Charlotte will proceed with her scheduled activities." Charlotte stood frozen between them. Her eyes moved from Wright to Pemberton and back. Confused, uncomfortable. Pemberton took a step closer to Wright. Voice low. "You're making a scene. Over nothing. The girl needs to come with me." "Why?" "Excuse me? Why does she need to come with you specifically? If there's a schedule change, why not notify her nanny? Why come yourself to retrieve her?" "Because I was asked to." "By whom?" "By the Queen Consort." "Then it won't be a problem to verify that." Wright kept his eyes on Pemberton. "Charlotte, please wait here with me. Mr. Pemberton is going to confirm this schedule change with his supervisor." Pemberton's jaw clenched. For a moment, Wright thought he might physically try to take Charlotte. His hand moved toward her. Stopped. He became aware of the corridor, other staff members passing, security, cameras. His expression smoothed, professional mask back in place. "Of course. I'll verify immediately. Clearly there's been a miscommunication." He looked at Charlotte, smiled. "Sorry for the confusion, Your Highness. I'll get this sorted out." He walked away quickly, not quite running, but close. Charlotte exhaled, a shaky breath. She'd been holding tension. Wright hadn't fully registered until it released. "Are you all right?" Wright asked quietly. She nodded, didn't speak. "Charlotte, I need you to answer honestly. Has Mr. Pemberton ever done anything that made you feel unsafe?" She looked up at him. Those young eyes, old beyond their years in that moment. "I'm not supposed to talk about it." Wright's stomach dropped. "Who told you not to talk about it?" "He did. He said it would cause problems, that people wouldn't understand, that I'd get people in trouble." "What wouldn't people understand?" Charlotte's hands twisted together. "The way he talks sometimes, the jokes he makes. They're not funny, they're mean. But he says I'm being too sensitive, that I need to grow up." "What kind of jokes?" She shook her head. "I don't want to repeat them. They made me feel bad." "Does he touch you?" "My shoulder. A lot. And my arm. He holds it when we're walking." tight. It doesn't hurt, but I don't like it. Wright crouched down to her eye level. Charlotte, listen to me carefully. You did nothing wrong. Nothing. And you're not being too sensitive. If something makes you uncomfortable, that matters. It matters a lot. Tears formed in her eyes. She blinked them back, trying to maintain composure. Royal training, fighting with child fear. I told my nanny I didn't want to ride with him anymore, Charlotte whispered. She said she'd see what she could do, but then nothing changed. And he got angry. He said people who complain cause problems for everyone. He said I should be grateful people want to help me. Wright felt cold rage building in his chest. Controlled. Professional. But there. When did he say that? Last week, in the car, when no one else was there. The music teacher appeared at the end of the corridor. Charlotte, so sorry I'm late, dear. Ready for your lesson? Charlotte wiped her eyes quickly, forced a smile. Yes, Mrs. Harrison. She started toward the teacher, stopped, looked back at Wright. Please don't leave me alone with him again. Then she was gone, disappeared into the music room. The door closed. Wright stood in the corridor, his mind racing. This was no longer intuition, no longer pattern recognition. This was a child directly telling him she felt unsafe. He pulled out his phone, called Captain Wells. He didn't know it yet, but Pemberton was already preparing to leave the palace grounds, with Charlotte, and he had no intention of following any authorized route. Wells answered on the second ring. Right. We have a situation. I need you at the North Corridor immediately. What happened? Charlotte just told me. She's scared of Pemberton, said he's been making her uncomfortable for weeks, touching her inappropriately, making threatening comments about what happens if she tells people. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm on my way. Don't move from that location. Wright stayed in the corridor, watched the music room door. Mrs. Harrison would keep Charlotte safe for the next hour. After that, Wright would make sure someone he trusted escorted her to lunch. Footsteps approached from both directions. Wells from the west and Pemberton from the east. They arrived simultaneously. I spoke with Queen Consort's office, Pemberton said immediately. There was a miscommunication, no schedule change. My apologies, Sergeant Wright. I was given incorrect information. Wright didn't respond, just looked at Wells. Wells stepped forward. Mr. Pemberton, I need to speak with you. Please come with me. Pemberton's eyes narrowed. Why? I explained the situation. Simple mistake. I'm not asking. Let's go. I have duties to attend to. Your duties are suspended pending an investigation. Pemberton's face went pale. Then, red. Investigation of what? This is ridiculous. I've done nothing wrong. Then you'll have no problem answering some questions. For a moment, Wright thought Pemberton would bolt. His weight shifted. Eyes moved toward the exit. Calculating. Then a new voice cut through the tension. What exactly is happening here? They all turned. Queen Consort Camilla stood at the corridor intersection, dressed impeccably, expression cool, authority radiating from every line of her posture. Your Majesty, Wells said, we're conducting a security review of one of your household staff. Marcus? Camilla's eyes moved to Pemberton. Why? Concerns have been raised about his interactions with Princess Charlotte. Camilla's expression hardened. What concerns? I'm not at liberty to discuss details in a public corridor. Marcus has been with me for nearly a year. His conduct has been exemplary. I trust him implicitly. She looked at Pemberton. Marcus, what is this about? Pemberton straightened, found his footing. I have no idea, Your Majesty. I've been nothing but professional. This sergeant seems to have taken issue with me for no reason I can discern. Wright stepped forward. Princess Charlotte stated that Mr. Pemberton has been making her uncomfortable, that he's touched her inappropriately and made threatening statements about her speaking up. Camilla's face was unreadable. Charlotte said this? Yes, ma'am. Directly to me. Less than 10 minutes ago. Children sometimes misinterpret adult authority, Camilla said. Voice measured. Marcus is firm when necessary. Perhaps Charlotte perceived discipline as something more concerning. This isn't about discipline, Wright said. This is about boundary violations. And you're basing this serious accusation on what? A child's complaint about her driver being strict? Wells intervened. Your Majesty, with respect, any concern raised by a principal must be investigated thoroughly. It's protocol. Protocol? Camilla's tone suggested what she thought of that. Very well, investigate. But I want it noted that I find this entire situation highly irregular. Marcus has served me faithfully. I will not have him harassed based on vague accusations. She turned to Pemberton. Say nothing without representation present. I'll contact my solicitor immediately. Then she walked away, heels clicking on marble, every inch the royal dismissing underlings. Pemberton's confidence returned. You heard Her Majesty. I want my solicitor present before I answer any questions. Wells nodded slowly. You're right. But until this investigation concludes, you're suspended from duty. Turn in your palace credentials and vehicle keys. Suspended? On what grounds? On grounds that a member of the royal family has expressed concern about your conduct. Credentials, now. Pemberton's hands shook slightly as he removed his ID badge, pulled car keys from his pocket, slammed them into Wells's hand. This is outrageous. I'll be filing a formal complaint. You do that. Wells pocketed the items. You're to leave palace grounds immediately. Do not attempt to contact Princess Charlotte or any member of the royal family. Do not return without explicit authorization. Am I clear? Crystal? Pemberton's eyes found Wright. You've made a serious mistake, both of you. He walked away, fast, angry. Wright watched until he disappeared around the corner. He's going to run. Maybe, Wells said. Or maybe he'll lawyer up and fight this. Either way, he's off the grounds. Charlotte's safe from him here. For now. What about when she leaves? School runs? Public appearances? We'll assign different security. Someone Charlotte trusts. Mrs. Dunmore will be notified. William and Kate will be informed immediately. Wells looked at Wright. You did the right thing, regardless of how this plays out. But Wright's instincts were screaming. Something was wrong. Pemberton had left too easily. A man who'd been building access for months, who'd been carefully grooming a target. He wouldn't just walk away because he'd been suspended. He'd escalate. What happened next would prove Wright's instincts correct. Because Marcus Pemberton hadn't left the palace grounds at all. He'd gone to the vehicle depot, where Charlotte's afternoon schedule showed she'd need transport to Kensington Palace. And he had a spare set of keys he'd never turned in. What the guard discovered next would expose a pattern that had been hidden for months. But first, if you're enjoying this story, drop a like and let us know in the comments. Would you trust your instincts in this situation? Now, here's what happened when Pemberton made his move. Wright couldn't shake the feeling. He'd watched Pemberton leave the corridor, seen him turn toward the exit. But something felt incomplete. He pulled out his phone, called Palace Security Office. This is Wright. Can you confirm Marcus Pemberton left the grounds? Checking. Pause. Computer keys clicking. Vehicle depot shows his assigned sedan is still in the garage. He hasn't checked out a vehicle. His credentials were revoked 15 minutes ago. How long does it take to walk from the North Corridor to the vehicle depot? 5 minutes, maybe less. Check the cameras, see if he actually left the building. Hold on. Wright waited, watched the music room door. Charlotte was inside, safe, for now. Right, we've got a problem. Cameras show Pemberton entering the vehicle depot 7 minutes ago. Never shows him leaving. Wright's blood went cold. He's still there. Why would he? Then it hit him. Check Charlotte's afternoon schedule. What transport is assigned? More keyboard sounds. Then, Princess Charlotte has piano practice until 1300. Then lunch with Queen Consort. Transport to Kensington Palace, scheduled for 1500. Hours. Vehicle already assigned and prepped. Which vehicle? Black sedan. License plate. Pemberton's usual vehicle. Yes, but he's suspended. Someone else will drive it. Unless he has spare keys. Wright was already moving, running down the corridor. Lock down the vehicle depot. No vehicles in or out until I get there. And get Captain Wells to Charlotte's location immediately. She needs additional security. Copy that. Dispatching now. Wright hit the main corridor at full speed. Staff members pressed against walls as he passed. He yanked his radio from his belt. All units, this is Wright. Possible security threat in progress. Palace Vehicle Depot. Need backup immediately. The depot was 2 buildings away, connected by covered walkway. Wright covered the distance in under a minute. The depot entrance was closed, locked from inside. Wright pounded on the door. Palace security, open this door. No response. He tried his access card. Red light. Lock had been manually engaged from inside. Wright stepped back, keyed his radio. Depot entrance is locked. Pemberton's barricaded himself inside. I need override authorization now. The response crackled back. Authorization granted. Maintenance is bringing master key. ETA, 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Too long. Wright examined the door. Heavy steel, reinforced hinges, built to prevent unauthorized access. He couldn't break it down. But the windows on the depot's east wall weren't reinforced. Wright ran around the building, found a window, ground level, locked but standard glass. He grabbed a maintenance equipment box from nearby, smashed it through the window. Glass shattered, alarm blared. Wright cleared the remaining shards, pulled himself through, dropped into the depot's maintenance section. The garage bay stretched in front of him. 20 vehicles in various states of preparation. Mechanics' tools scattered on workbenches. And at the far end, near the exit ramp, Pemberton sat in the driver's seat of the black sedan, engine running. Wright drew his sidearm, didn't aim it, just held it ready. Pemberton, step out of the vehicle. Pemberton turned his head, saw Wright. His expression was calm, too calm, like someone who'd already committed to a course of action. I'm just doing my job, Pemberton called back. Princess Charlotte needs transport to Kensington at 1500 hours. I'm preparing the vehicle. You're suspended. You don't have authorization to be here. Small miscommunication. Her Majesty will clarify. The Queen Consort doesn't override security protocols. Wright moved closer, weapon still lowered. Turn off the engine. Step out of the vehicle. Slowly. Pemberton's hand moved to the gear shift. I have a job to do. You don't. Not anymore. Whatever you're planning, it ends now. Planning? Pemberton laughed. Sharp. Bitter. You've already decided I'm guilty of something. Might as well make it worth it. The vehicle lurched forward. Wright jumped aside. The sedan accelerated toward the exit ramp. Wright raised his weapon. Couldn't shoot. Too many fuel lines. Risk of explosion. He ran after the vehicle instead. The exit ramp led to a security checkpoint. Automated barrier. Guard station. The sedan would have to stop. Unless Pemberton planned to ram through. Wright hit his radio while running. Security gate. Black sedan approaching. Do not raise barrier. Driver is unauthorized and potentially dangerous. The response came instantly. Copy that. Barrier staying down. Guards in position. Wright reached the ramp as the sedan approached the checkpoint. The barrier remained lowered. 2 guards stood in position, hands on weapons. The sedan slowed, stopped 10 feet from the barrier. Wright approached from behind. Weapon raised now. Pemberton, hands where I can see them. Now. The driver's door opened slowly. Pemberton stepped out, hands raised, face blank. "On the ground," one of the checkpoint guards commanded. "Face down, hands behind your head." Pemberton complied, moved to his knees, then prone position. One guard moved in with restraints while the other kept weapon trained. Wright circled the sedan, checked the interior. Empty. Pemberton had been alone, but something was wrong. This was too easy, too quick. Wright opened the rear door, looked inside. Standard interior, leather seats, climate control, tinted windows. Then he saw it, child booster seat, installed in the back. Standard safety equipment for Charlotte's size, but tucked under the seat. A tablet, screen still lit. Wright pulled it out carefully. The display showed a map, route programmed into GPS. Not the route to Kensington Palace, a route heading north, out of London, toward rural countryside. Destination, private airfield near Cambridge. Wright's hands tightened on the tablet. He scrolled through the route history. This wasn't the first time this destination had been programmed. Multiple entries over the past 3 weeks. Same location, different dates. He was planning this for weeks. "Get him up," Wright said to the checkpoint guards. "I need to see his phone." They hauled Pemberton to his feet, hands restrained behind his back. One guard searched his pockets, pulled out a mobile phone, handed it to Wright. Wright scrolled through messages. Most were innocuous, work-related communications, personal texts to friends. Then he found a separate messaging app, encrypted, but Pemberton hadn't logged out. Messages to an unknown contact, number hidden behind encryption. 3 weeks ago. Target confirmed, access established. 2 weeks ago. Building trust, she'll come willingly, when ready. 1 week ago. Timeline accelerating, outside pressure increasing, may need to move sooner. Yesterday. Final preparations complete, window closes Friday afternoon, taking the opportunity. Today, sent 40 minutes ago, en route to extraction, we'll have package by 1500. Package. He'd been planning to take Charlotte, not just make her uncomfortable, not just boundary violations, full extraction, to an airfield, where someone else was waiting. Wright's vision narrowed, his breath came fast. Professional composure struggling against pure rage. He looked at Pemberton. The man's face was still blank, emotionless. "Who were you delivering her to?" Wright's voice was deadly quiet. Pemberton said nothing. "Who's waiting at that airfield?" Silence. "You were going to take a child, a 9-year-old girl, drive her to an airfield and hand her over to someone. For what? Money? Some sick arrangement?" Pemberton's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Captain Wells arrived at a run. 3 more guards with him. He took in the scene immediately. "What happened?" Wright handed him the tablet and phone. He was planning to take Charlotte this afternoon. Had a route programmed to a private airfield. Messages on his phone confirming intent. This wasn't boundary violations. This was attempted abduction. Wells scrolled through the evidence. His face went pale, then red. "Get Metropolitan Police here, now. This is beyond palace security." One of the guards pulled out his radio, made the call. Wells looked at Pemberton. "You have the right to remain silent, but I suggest you start talking. Who were you working for?" Pemberton smiled. "Small, cold. You'll never prove anything. That tablet could be anyone's. Those messages could mean anything. You're reading into it. The tablet was in your vehicle. The phone is registered to you. The GPS history shows multiple trips planned to the same location. I was researching routes, part of my job, and I don't control what previous drivers programmed into that GPS. The messages, taken out of context. But what Pemberton didn't know was that Palace IT had been monitoring his digital activity since Wright's first inquiry. Every search, every message, every website visited, and the evidence was far more damning than he realized. The next few moments changed everything. The truth was worse than anyone imagined. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. We share royal protection stories like this daily. Here's what the investigation revealed. Wright's phone buzzed. Text from Palace IT director. Call me immediately. Found something. Wright stepped away, made the call. What do you have? We've been tracking Pemberton's digital footprint since this morning, going through his search history, website visits, email accounts. He's been careful, used encryption, but not careful enough. The IT director's voice was tight. He's been researching private transportation services, cash-only arrangements, how to avoid airport security, and he's been on dark web forums discussing international trafficking networks. Wright felt sick. Trafficking? Not conclusive, but the pattern suggests he was researching how to move someone across borders without documentation. Specifically a minor, specifically a high-value target. Send everything to Captain Wells and copy Metropolitan Police. They need to see this now. Already done, but right, there's more. His employment application, his references. We finally got through to his supposed previous employer. The reference was fake. Company exists, but they never employed anyone named Marcus Pemberton. He fabricated his entire work history. How did he get hired? Queen Consort's office did preliminary screening, but they didn't verify references thoroughly. Took them at face value. He presented well, seemed professional, and once Camilla approved him, security assumed the vetting had been completed. Institutional failure. Exactly what Wright had feared. Keep digging, Wright said. I want to know everything about this man. Real name, real background, everything. He returned to the checkpoint. Wells was on his own phone, speaking to someone in clipped professional tones, making arrangements. When Wells hung up, he looked at Wright. Metropolitan Police are sending their child protection unit. Detective Inspector Sarah Chen. She specializes in cases involving minors. ETA 15 minutes. Charlotte needs to be informed, and her parents. Already being handled. William and Kate are being contacted now. They're at a public engagement in Kent. They'll return immediately. Wells paused. And someone needs to tell Charlotte what happened, what almost happened. Wright felt the weight of it. Charlotte trusted him. She'd told him she was scared, and he'd been right to listen. But she was still in her piano lesson, still didn't know how close she'd come to something unthinkable. I'll tell her, Wright said. She knows me. She trusts me. Wells nodded. Take Mrs. Dunmore with you. Charlotte will need someone familiar beside her. 20 minutes later, Wright and Mrs. Dunmore stood outside the music room. The piano had stopped playing. The lesson was ending. The door opened. Mrs. Harrison emerged first. Then, Charlotte. She was smiling, carrying her music books. The smile faded when she saw Wright's expression. Charlotte, he said gently, could you come with us for a moment? Your nanny and I need to talk to you about something important. Charlotte's face went guarded. Am I in trouble? No, not at all. But something happened that you need to know about. They found a small private room, comfortable furniture, natural light. Wright made sure Charlotte sat between him and Mrs. Dunmore. Safe, supported. Charlotte, Wright began carefully, remember this morning when you told me about Mr. Pemberton, about how he made you uncomfortable? She nodded, hands clasped in her lap. You were right to tell me, very right, because Mr. Pemberton was planning something bad. Something that would have hurt you. Her eyes widened. What do you mean? He was planning to take you away this afternoon. Not to Kensington Palace like your schedule said. Somewhere else. Somewhere your parents didn't know about. Charlotte's breath caught. Take me where? We're still figuring that out. But the important thing is that he didn't succeed. He's been stopped. He can't hurt you. He can't come near you ever again. Tears formed in Charlotte's eyes. Not from current fear, from realization of what could have happened. I knew something was wrong. I knew it. But I thought I was being silly, that I was imagining things. Mrs. Dunmore put her arm around Charlotte's shoulders. You weren't silly. You weren't imagining anything. Your instincts were protecting you. Why would he want to take me? Charlotte's voice was small, young. Wright chose his words carefully. Some people want to hurt others for bad reasons. We don't fully understand why yet, but what matters is that you're safe. Your parents are coming, and we have very strict new rules to make sure nothing like this ever happens again. Did I do something to make him want to hurt me? No. Wright's voice was firm. Absolute. This is not your fault, not even a little bit. Nothing you did or said caused this. Mr. Pemberton made these choices. Bad choices. Wrong choices. You did exactly what you should have done. You told someone you felt unsafe, and because you did that, we were able to stop him. Charlotte wiped her eyes. What happens to him now? The police are handling that. He'll be held accountable for what he planned to do. Good. Charlotte's voice was steady suddenly, stronger. I don't want him to hurt anyone else. Wright saw the resilience there, the same strength that would one day make her a remarkable adult. But for now, she was still a child who'd been targeted by someone who should have protected her. Your mum and dad will be here soon, Mrs. Dunmore said softly. And they're going to want to hear from you. About everything. Can you be brave a bit longer? Charlotte nodded. I can be brave. Detective Inspector Sarah Chen arrived 30 minutes later. 43 years old. 20 years with Metropolitan Police. 15 specializing in child protection. She'd seen every kind of threat to children. Handled the worst cases with professionalism and care. She interviewed Charlotte with Mrs. Dunmore present, asked questions that were direct but gentle, never pushing, always giving Charlotte control. Charlotte told her everything. The jokes that weren't funny, the way Pemberton touched her shoulder too much, how he'd grip her arm, the comments about not telling people, the way he'd position himself to be alone with her. Did he ever try to get you to go somewhere with him that wasn't on your schedule? Chen asked. Charlotte thought about it. 2 weeks ago, he said there was a shortcut to school, a different route, but I told him I didn't want to go a different way. He got quiet, didn't talk to me the rest of the drive. Chen made notes. Did he ever give you gifts, or ask you to keep secrets? No gifts. But he said things like, this stays between us. Don't upset your grandmother by mentioning it. Or, your parents are busy, no need to bother them with small things. Classic isolation tactics, building dependency, creating separation between victim and support systems. You've been very helpful, Charlotte, Chen said. Very brave. What you've told me will help make sure Mr. Pemberton can't hurt you or anyone else. Will he go to jail? That's for courts to decide, but I can promise you this, he will be held accountable. William and Kate arrived 45 minutes later. They'd broken every speed record getting back to London. Royal Protection had cleared roads, made it possible. Kate went directly to Charlotte, pulled her into a tight embrace. Said nothing, just held her daughter. William stood with Wells and Wright. His face was controlled, royal composure, but his eyes showed the rage underneath. Tell me everything, William said quietly. Wright walked him through it. The initial observation, Charlotte's disclosure, the suspension, the attempted abduction, the evidence found. William listened without interrupting. When Wright finished, William was quiet for a long moment. He got within hours of taking my daughter, William finally said. Hours, because someone in this palace didn't do their job properly. We're conducting a full review of hiring practices, Wells said. Every staff member with access to the children will be re-vetted. Enhanced background checks, real verification, not just administrative box checking. That should have been done from the beginning. William's voice was cold. How did he get hired? Who approved him? Wells hesitated. Queen Consort's office conducted the preliminary screening. Pemberton came recommended, seemed qualified. Security assumed proper vetting had occurred. Assumed? William's jaw tightened. I want to speak with Camilla. Now. The final moments of this story are unforgettable. Stay with us until the end. Now here's what happened when William confronted Camilla. The meeting happened in a private office. Only 4 people present. William, Kate, Camilla, and King Charles. Wright wasn't in the room, but he heard about it afterward. From Wells, who'd been briefed by Charles's private secretary. William didn't shout, didn't raise his voice. That would have been easier. Instead, he spoke with devastating calm. Charlotte was nearly taken today, driven to an airfield, handed over to someone we haven't even identified yet. All because a man you hired without proper vetting had been systematically grooming my daughter for weeks. Camilla had prepared her defense. I followed proper procedures. His references checked out. He presented exceptionally well. I had no reason to suspect. His references were fake, Kate interrupted. Voice quiet but hard. Every single one. The previous employer doesn't exist. His work history was fabricated, and no one in your office bothered to verify any of it. That's not my responsibility. Security handles background checks. You approved the hire, William said. You brought him into this household, into contact with my children. And when staff members raised concerns, you dismissed them. What concerns? No one brought specific. 3 separate reports. William pulled out a folder, slapped it on the table. Housekeeper noted his frequent presence near children's quarters. Another guard observed him alone with Charlotte, noted she seemed uncomfortable. Charlotte's own nanny mentioned behavioral changes, all documented, all in your office, all ignored. Camilla's composure cracked slightly. If these were serious concerns, they should have been escalated. They were escalated to your private secretary, who told staff you didn't appreciate your household being questioned. Kate leaned forward. You created an environment where questioning your judgment became impossible, where staff learned to keep quiet rather than report concerns. I don't appreciate being blamed for a criminal's actions. You're not being blamed for his actions, William said. You're being held accountable for your negligence, for hiring practices that put my daughter in danger, for dismissing valid concerns, for prioritizing your authority over children's safety. Charles had been quiet until now. He finally spoke. Camilla, this is unacceptable. William and Kate's concerns are valid. Changes must be made. Camilla turned to him. Are you taking their side against me? I'm taking the side of proper safeguarding, which should never have been in question. Charles's tone was firm. Effective immediately, all household staff hiring will be subject to royal protection vetting. No exceptions. All current staff will be rescreened, and you will attend mandatory training on safeguarding protocols. This is humiliating. This is necessary. William stood. Charlotte won't be spending unsupervised time with your household staff until we're satisfied proper protections are in place. That's not negotiable. Kate stood as well. If you'd taken the first concern, seriously, this could have been prevented. Instead, you dismissed it, and my daughter paid the price in fear and trauma. They left. Camilla sat in silence with Charles. According to the secretary's report, she never apologized, never acknowledged fault, just sat there, feeling wronged. The investigation that followed revealed the full scope of Pemberton's deception. His real name was Marcus Henley, 42 years old, British national with a criminal record he'd hidden through identity fraud. Previous conviction for fraud and forgery. Restraining order from a previous employer after inappropriate behavior toward a teenager in their household. He'd reinvented himself, created fake references, fabricated work history. Applied to Camilla's office, knowing their screening was less rigorous than direct royal protection hiring. The messages on his phone led police to a contact in Eastern Europe. someone who'd arranged passage and documentation for a child matching Charlotte's description. The plan had been to drive her to the private airfield, tranquilize her if necessary, hand her over to a pilot who'd fly her out of UK airspace before alarm could be raised. The intended destination remained unclear, but the purpose was likely ransom, or worse. Pemberton was charged with attempted abduction of a minor, child endangerment, fraud, identity theft, multiple other charges. His trial wouldn't happen for months, but he wouldn't see freedom again. The evidence was overwhelming. 1 week later, Wright was called to a private meeting. He arrived at a small office in Kensington Palace, expected to see Wells or another supervisor. Instead, William and Kate were waiting. "Sergeant Wright," William said. "Please, sit." Wright sat. Uncomfortable in the informal setting, Kate spoke first. "We wanted to thank you personally for listening to Charlotte, for trusting your instincts when others might have dismissed them. I was doing my job, Your Royal Highness. You were doing far more than that." William leaned forward. "Most people would have seen a rough interaction and moved on. You saw a pattern, you investigated, you acted, and because you did, our daughter is safe." "Charlotte told us she felt safe because you were there," Kate added. "That you listened when she couldn't say what was wrong. That means everything to us." Wright didn't know what to say, settled for simple truth. "She's a remarkable young person, brave, stronger than she realizes." "She is," Kate smiled, genuine warmth. "She asked to see you, actually, if you have time." Wright followed them to a family sitting room. Charlotte was there, playing cards with her brothers. When she saw Wright, she stood immediately. "Sergeant Wright," she crossed the room, looked up at him. "Mum said you're the one who stopped him, Mr. Pemberton." "I had help. A lot of people worked together. But you believed me. When I said something was wrong, you believed me right away." "Of course I did." Charlotte reached into her pocket, pulled out something small, a pin, the royal cipher, one of the traditional tokens given to recognize service. "Mum and Dad said I could give this to you, if I wanted." She held it out. "I want you to have it, so you remember that listening to people matters, even when they're just kids." Wright accepted the pin carefully. "I'll treasure this, Princess Charlotte, and I promise you, I'll never forget what you taught me." "What did I teach you?" "That courage comes in all sizes, and that trusting someone enough to tell them you're scared is one of the bravest things anyone can do." Charlotte smiled, genuine, relieved. Then she hugged him quickly, child to protector, brief but heartfelt. She returned to her brothers, back to being a normal child, playing cards, laughing, healing. Wright left the palace that evening thinking about patterns. How small details accumulated into larger truths. How intuition mattered, even when logic said to ignore it. True duty wasn't about following orders blindly. It was about knowing when rules mattered less than doing what's right. It was about paying attention to the quiet signals everyone else missed. It was about understanding that protecting people meant seeing them, really seeing them. Pemberton had counted on people not paying attention, on institutional apathy, on the assumption that someone so close to power must be trustworthy. He'd been wrong, because one guard decided to trust his instincts, to listen to a child, to act when action wasn't convenient. Sometimes that's all it takes. One person willing to see what others miss, to speak up when staying quiet is easier, to believe a child who says something's wrong. The pin Charlotte had given him sat in his pocket. Small weight, huge meaning. Wright drove home that night knowing he'd done exactly what he was meant to do. Not because he'd been ordered to, but because protecting people meant actually protecting them, even when it complicated everything, even when it challenged authority, even when everyone said he was overreacting, especially then. Because the alternative, letting Pemberton take Charlotte because questioning seemed inappropriate, was unthinkable. If this story showed you something about royal protection that you didn't know, make sure you're subscribed to Royal Guard Files. We share these untold stories from inside the palace walls every single day. Drop a comment below. If you were Thomas Wright, would you have stopped that vehicle based on the backpack incident alone? Or would you have waited for more evidence? Let us know your thoughts. We'll see you in the next one.